Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I'm following my Facebook feed here. Greetings from Litchfield, Connecticut. My name is Carrie Schved. I am the Education Director at White Memorial Conservation Center. So thank you so much for joining today. We are doing this program as part of the Connecticut Deep's virtual winter festival. So we are having a little Facebook watch party. I believe we're also streaming on Connecticut Deep's Facebook page. So you can head on over there either now to watch the program or anytime during the day. They're offering a cool list of programs throughout the day as part of their winter festival. So please make sure to tune in to those programs as well. I want to thank Kristen and all the folks at Connecticut Deep for allowing White Memorial to be a part of your festival today. So once again, my name is Carrie, and I'm here at White Memorial Conservation Center. And just to give you a very brief history of White Memorial, we're here in Litchfield and Morris, Connecticut. The foundation spans about 4,000 acres, one of the largest private sanctuaries here in the state of Connecticut. And this foundation was founded by Elaine and May White, who were a brother and sister duo that established the property in memory of their parents. And actually, we are comprised of 4,000 acres here, but Elaine and May were amazing land conservationists, not only by the standards back in 1913, but I would say by today's standards as well. Not only did they set aside this area here as sanctuary, but also they donated about 6,000 acres to our state park system. So Kent Falls State Park, Campbell's Falls, Macedonia Brook, those are all properties that were donated by Elaine and May White. So they were amazing land conservationists. And we have them to thank for this, for a lot of the natural property that exists here in Northwestern Connecticut. Now, Elaine and May White, they lived here in the late 1800s through the early 1900s. Their family settled this area in the mid 1800s. Of course, they weren't the first family to live in this area. We are right on the edge of Bantam Lake, which we know was a hunting and fishing ground for the Pintum families of the Potatuck indigenous tribe. And actually our museum, our wonderful nature museum, is chock full of not only human history of the area, but also amazing natural history. Unfortunately, our museum is closed at the moment, has been closed since last March, and we don't have a definite opening date. But that's why I'm so glad that I can still reach you through this virtual world and talk about the amazing nature that we have all around us. So today's topic is called Wildlife in Winter. So we're basically talking about what do all those animals do during the winter time? How do they cope with winter? We know what we do. You know, we definitely have certain behavior changes that we make during the winter time so that we can remain active. And actually remaining active is one of the main ways that animals get through the winter time. But we're also going to talk about two other methods, one of them being migration and the other one being hibernation. So today I've got three live animals to show you, as well as several cool props and even a couple little quiz games that we're going to do. I'm going to try to make this interactive. So for those of you that are on the Facebook chat, feel free to go back and forth on the chat. I am following my feed, and we can play games, we can have fun, and we can learn about wildlife in winter. So here we go. All right, so let's start with actually not a live animal. We're going to start with a mount of a beautiful animal that we have that lives around here. This gorgeous type of waterfowl. A lot of you are probably familiar with this duck. This is a wood duck. This is a wood duck mount. I can't believe that we are lucky enough to have an animal in our midst that is such a beautiful animal. You see the bright green plumage on the head. Even the beak is cool, different colors, the red eyes. So wood ducks are just beautiful, beautiful animals. And we are lucky enough to be able to see them throughout most of their breeding season. So the spring and summer and even into the fall. But of course, during the winter time, we don't see them as much anymore. And that's kind of one of the main themes of this program is why aren't we seeing as many animals as we would normally see during the summertime? Why aren't we seeing them in winter? And of course, that is because of where they're going and what they're doing in order to survive the winter. In the case of the wood duck, it is because they are migrating. Now, migration doesn't have as much to do with the temperature drop, with the cold weather. It has a lot more to do with the lack of food that's available. So in the case of the wood duck and many other species of waterfowl, they would typically feed on vegetation and insects that are either on or under the water's surface. Any kind of, they would probably be at any sort of freshwater pond or lake. But during the winter, most of those bodies of water will freeze over in our area. And so they can't get to their food. So it's that lack of food that requires them to migrate further south where they can still find food. So once again, not so much about the winter weather. They could probably handle some pretty cold days, but it's the fact that they can't find the resources that they need to survive during the winter. So migration is definitely one of the methods that animals use to get through winter time. And it's pretty easy when you are a bird. In fact, it's kind of fitting that I'm using this particular mount today because it is a bird in flight. Because when you have wings, it makes it really easy to get out of town. And so a lot of birds do end up migrating. Not all birds, of course. We do still see many species of birds here in the wintertime. As long as they can find their food, they will stay here. But there are other species that definitely migrate south because they have the ability to just fly away. So I'm going to show you, actually, I'm going to show you a really cool poster. And hopefully it will show up in the screen here. This is a poster that just kind of highlights the migration routes, and I'll try to make sure the glare isn't too bad. This highlights the migration routes of many, many types of birds that fly south during the wintertime. And you can see what a complicated mix of routes it really is. And so the question is, how do they do it? How do birds, how do they go thousands of miles south for the winter and then figure out how to make it back up here during the springtime, which we're still trying to figure out, to be honest. And we think it's not necessarily one method. It's probably a combination of several methods. This poster actually gives a really good summary of what we're thinking, how birds manage to make it down and back again. So I'm just really quickly going to read this paragraph from this poster. So scientists don't exactly know how migrating birds find their way over long distances, but they are discovering that birds tune into an astonishing variety of sensory clues that may be used for navigation. Observers have long theorized that migrants use mountain ranges, rivers, and coastlines for guidance. Scientific research suggests that some birds may also set courses by the sun or by the patterns of the stars or even the lines of force in Earth's magnetic field, perhaps even in combination with gravity. So once again, many factors playing in here. Some birds respond to ultraviolet and polarized light and can hear low frequency sounds that travel thousands of miles. They give an example here of the upland sandpiper that could conceivably, when it's flying over the Mississippi River, could conceivably hear the surf from both the Atlantic and Pacific coasts. So they're tuning into senses that we can't really even comprehend, but it's just fascinating that they're able to do that. And birds are one of the main animals that get through winter by migrating to places where they can find more food. Now, of course, birds aren't the only species that migrate, and I'm going to throw this out to the folks that are watching right now. If you could respond back in the chat, what other animals can you think of that use migration as a strategy to cope with winter, but they aren't birds? Can you think of any other species? There's a slight delay on the Facebook page, so I'm just going to hold off for a second and see if I get any chats coming through. Birds are really like the superstars of migration, but there are other animals that will migrate as well. Does anyone want to chime in with any ideas of what else might migrate? I have a poster to show you in just a second. to kind of clue you in on one that I'm thinking of. Let's see, anybody coming in? No? All right, let me show you my poster real quick. Oh, here we go. There we go. Yes, Kate says monarch butterflies. Absolutely. So there are some animals with wings that aren't birds that do migrate. Monarchs are astounding in the fact that they can, as little insects, can migrate sometimes 2,000 miles from the East Coast all the way down to a mountain range in Mexico. And spend the winter down there. So that is incredible. There are certain fish that migrate. Whales, thank you very much. Yeah, now our answers are coming in. I'm going to show my poster real quick. Although Leo hit the nail on the head here, there are many species of whales that will migrate from their breeding grounds down to their wintering grounds. So that's one to think about. Reindeer or caribou will migrate. And again, it has a lot to do. It has more to do with their food resources than it does the weather. Okay, so that's a lot of what migration is about. Hummingbirds, yep, are a type of bird that migrate. Very, very good. In fact, I would say the record setter when it comes to migration is this particular type of bird right here. This is known as the Arctic tern. This tern spends its summers up in the Arctic Circle, hence the name, but will migrate over 12,000 miles down to the opposite pole to spend their wintering season. So they spend their winters down essentially in the South Pole, and then they migrate back up to the North Pole, okay? And I wanna just go back real quick to hummingbirds that somebody said on the chat. They're a really good example of the fact that when these birds do come back to their breeding grounds, they can come back down to the exact same yard that they left. And I know some of you have probably had experience with that before. You know, if you feed hummingbirds sugar water during the season that they're here, and then, you know, springtime, usually around the beginning of May, these hummingbirds will come back up, and the same hummingbird that was in your yard the year before will look in your window and be like, where's the sugar water? So they can not only figure out the general region of where they're going back to, but sometimes they can go right down to the exact yard that they were in the prior year. So I'm just fascinated by animals that are able to migrate and all the strategies that they use to do that. So that's one of the main methods of coping with wintertime is migration. And now we're going to move on to another strategy that I kind of wish I could do all winter time. And that is basically going into a deep sleep. I love taking winter naps, but we're talking about more than just, you know, an hour or two at a time. Some animals will literally be sleeping the entire winter, and not just a regular sleep. They are going into a super reduced state in their metabolic functions, in their physiological functions. Of course, we know it as hibernation, although it kind of depends on what group of animals you're talking about. When it comes to mammals, we use the term hibernation. When it comes to reptiles and amphibians, the technical term for it is brumation. And for insects, it is diapause. But basically, it is this dormant state when the heart rate goes way down, the breathing rate goes way down, the body temperature goes way down, basically most processes, most metabolic and physiological processes that are happening inside the animal's body just slow down. And they usually don't eat. These animals don't eat. Oftentimes they don't even go to the bathroom. They just spend the whole winter in a deep sleep. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about those animals right now. And I do actually have a live animal as a representative of an animal that goes into this deep sleep state during the winter. So I'm going to bring out my first live animal to show you right now. He's just waiting right over here in his carrier. Hey, all right, this guy's name is Jacob. And he's normally on exhibit in our museum, but I do get to take him out every once in a while for education programs. He is buried in his blanket. Looks like he still wanted to keep sleeping. Don't worry, buddy, you get to go back to sleep afterwards. All right. So I will say he is a member of the reptile group, just to kind of give you a hint of what you're about to see. And it is one of the longest creatures that we have in Connecticut. So that'll probably give you another big hint. I'm going to start with just the head. So let's peek his little head in here. Oh, there's our buddy. Here's Jacob, the eastern rat snake. Okay. And I just want to take him out slowly so you can get an idea of how long this creature actually is. So we start here and then we start wrapping him around. Oh my goodness. And we just keep on coming and coming and coming. Oh my goodness. Okay. There, we finally got to see all of them at once. This amazing animal is about 5.5 feet long. Eastern rat snakes are the longest type of snake that we have in Connecticut. They are non-venomous, so no, you don't have to worry about me handling him right now. He does not have any venom. Of course, all snakes can bite, and that doesn't make a snake a mean snake just because it has the ability to bite. Usually snakes bite if they are scared, if they are feeling threatened. If you're an animal without arms or legs and you need to defend yourselves, one of the places you might go is using your teeth. And so snakes are not bad animals by any means, but yes, they all do have the ability to bite. I would not necessarily pick up a wild eastern rat snake, but Jacob is one that lives here at the center and has lived here since he was very, very young. So he's a little bit more used to being handled. Let's give you a nice close look in the screen here. Oh, and there's his tongue coming out. Again, his tongue is not being used as a way to threaten you or to tease you in any way. That is how he is sensing his environment. So being that he's in kind of this new place, I just took him out of his carrier. He's just getting to know what's around him. And snakes, a snake's sense of smell is their best sense. So that's what he's using right now. They basically smell by sticking out their tongue, letting the scent particles fall on the tongue, bringing it back into his mouth, putting his tongue up against his Jacobson's organ. And well, for all snakes, it's called the Jacobson's organ, even though this guy is named Jacob. And that is how they actually do their smelling. Okay, so that's why he tends to stick out his tongue a fair amount. You gonna do it one more time? There you go. All right, so let's talk about what this animal is doing during the winter time. This animal is obviously not out on top of the surface of the snow. In fact, most cold-blooded animals, most ectothermic animals have to hibernate during the winter because their body temperature is really dependent on the temperature around them. So in the case of cold-blooded animals, temperature does make a difference as to whether they're able to stay active or not. If this animal were to try to be out in the middle of winter when it's 20 degrees outside, their body temperature is going to drop to 20 degrees, and that is not a state that they can survive in. So they basically need to go either under the ground, into the depths of a tree trunk, deep down, maybe under a log, in the leaf litter, somewhere where the temperature stays warm enough, maybe like 40 to 50 degrees. And in that spot, they are going to hunker down and they are going to fall into their hibernation or their brumation state, okay? No eating, no going to the bathroom, just hanging out there all winter until they're cued by the warmer weather and longer days, and that's when they'll start to come out of their deep sleep, okay? Eastern rat snakes are not typically a snake that we see too often up here in the hills of Northwest Connecticut. I've never seen one here in Litchfield, not to say they're not here, but they're not super common. They tend to be a little bit more common down in the lower elevations. I'm gonna check my chat real quick just to see if anyone is making a comment about ever having seen a rat snake in the wild before. Like I said, they are the record setters, so they are fairly long. They can get to be over 5 feet, sometimes even up to 6 feet long. This snake is taller than I am. If I stand him up next to me, he actually is taller than me. And they are characterized by black on the top, obviously, but underneath you see a kind of cream colored, actually kind of more of a mottled pattern. So there's a little bit of, sorry about the glare there, but there's a little bit of darker coloration, a little bit of light coloration. It results in a kind of a mottled pattern on the underside, and that light color goes all the way up underneath their chin. Can often be confused with a black racer. Black racers don't get quite this long and also don't usually get this thick. They tend to be a little bit of a skinnier snake. All right. If anyone has any questions, you are more than welcome to chat in your questions. But we will say goodbye to Jacob for now. Beautiful creature. I'm sure he's looking forward to the days when it gets a little bit warmer and I can take him outside to exercise him on the lawn, right outside. In the meantime, we just take him out and we let him roam on the floor in the museum or sometimes down here in the classroom. So that's always fun to give him a chance to get out. All right. So that is an animal that definitely brumates during the winter time. And the only reason why Jacob here is not brumating is because he is inside in a controlled temperature that stays high enough that he doesn't need to go into that state. Okay. Speaking of, we have another animal that also brumates, also another type of reptile, but they go to a pretty interesting spot during the winter time, a spot that makes you wonder, how are they able to survive? We're going to talk about that in just a second. So let me go ahead and grab this next one. Oh, and as I'm grabbing it, I'm seeing a few comments come in that on my Facebook feed that I just want to address really quickly. My son is wondering if the venom comes out of his nose or his tongue. Both good guesses, but it's actually neither. It comes out, well, he doesn't have any venom, by the way. He has teeth, but he doesn't have the actual fangs. In a venomous snake, like a rattlesnake or a copperhead, the venom comes out of the fangs, okay? They're actually stored, the venom is stored up in little sacs above, and it comes through those fangs, okay? So that's where venom comes out in venomous snakes, of which Jacob was not. And then somebody's having a comment, oh yeah, yes, Bruce, I remember you mentioned this before, a black racer that was unfortunately caught in his strawberry netting, and it took 3 people to hold him from hurting his scales while we cut him loose from the netting. So that sounds like a very unfortunate situation that racer got caught in. Okay, thanks for the comments, guys. We're gonna move on to another animal that likes to brumate, but you wouldn't necessarily find this one sleeping underground or under logs, or certainly not in a tree. Let's talk about where this one goes. Ready? We're gonna go from a really big animal to a rather tiny animal right here. This is our gorgeous girl, Dottie. And Dottie is a lovely spotted turtle. Spotted turtle, which is actually a species of special concern here in Connecticut. That means not quite endangered, but they are at the point where their populations are rather low in the wild, due mostly to habitat loss. This is definitely a wetland dependent species. So with wetlands being converted to, other things, they are having a hard time finding the proper habitat to find their food and water and shelter. But Dottie here was actually given to us by a woman whose mother had collected Dottie as a hatchling about 30 years ago. I'm not sure what the laws were back then. I know now there are laws that make it so that you are not allowed to collect animals that are protected. Wild animals in general are not supposed to be collected from the wild and should not be collected from the wild. But this girl, unfortunately, 30 years ago was collected as a hatchling, and she was kept as a pet for the entirety of her life until the woman that collected her was no longer able to take care of her. And so her daughter donated Dottie to us. And after living in captivity for 25 years, by the time she came to us, we knew that she was an animal that probably wouldn't be able to survive out in the wild. She's never had to brumate like wild turtles do. And so she probably wouldn't have been fit to survive in the wild. So we have kept her here as an education animal. She is amazing. For being 30 years old, it's amazing that she's still this tiny, but spotted turtles just don't get super big. So let's talk about her wild cousins. Where would her wild cousins go during the wintertime? Well, being that they are a wetland species, a freshwater pond turtle, essentially, they are not going to hibernate underneath any kind of land. They are going to go underneath the water. to brumate, okay? They're going to go deep down into the mud underneath a pond or a swamp or a bog or a stream, okay? The question is, when you're down there under the water, they can't breathe. they can't breathe through their mouths. This is an air breathing animal. In the summertime, it's not like they can stay underwater indefinitely. They need to come up out of the water, expose their snouts with their nostrils. Let me show you those nostrils. She's being shy right now. So they are air breathing animals. And so the question is, how are they able to survive if they are under the water? We couldn't do that. And the answer is kind of a little bit on the gross side, but that's what also makes it really fun. So there are other ways, there are other holes, let's say, where an animal can get its oxygen when it's under the water. And it turns out with turtles, they're not getting their oxygen through their nostrils for the most part. They are getting their oxygen through their backsides. So there's a lovely hole back there called the cloaca, which I also like to jokingly refer to as the all-purpose hole, because that's basically the place where turtles go to the bathroom. That's the place where turtles lay their eggs. That's the place where turtles mate. It is the cloaca is a very important part of their bodies, and it is also the place where a lot of their oxygen goes in and out of their body from, basically using the oxygen that's in the soil and in the water while they're under the water, buried deep in that mud. That is how they're still able to get oxygen in and out of their system and survive during the winter time. So they are basically holding their breath under the water in this deep, deep sleep, but they're still able to get oxygen through their cloaca, okay? So fun fact for you, turtles actually do breathe through their backsides. Only in the winter time though, for the most part. All right. Oh, you're giving them a good look of your beautiful coloration. Obviously, spotted turtle, good name for this species. They not only have spots on their shell, but also gorgeous yellow spots on their skin, which you're seeing a little bit of right now. Hey, Dottie, such a good girl you are. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put Dottie back. I'm just going to see, let me see if anyone else has any comments about Dottie or about brumation. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and put Dottie back. And she lives down in our classroom here at White Memorial. And I do use her for in-person education programs when we do in-person education programs, which of course we're not doing very many of these days, but she's been a pretty awesome program animal for us. All right. So we've talked about migration as a way to get through the winter time for animals that are able to do that. We have talked about hibernation in mammals, hibernation in reptiles and amphibians, brumation in insects, diapause. Basically, it's just a deep sleep that these animals go into where their bodily functions and their metabolic processes are very much reduced, okay? And then we have the animals that basically just remain active like humans. They just get through the winter. They pretty much do the same things they were doing in the summertime. They do them in the winter too, but in order to remain active, a lot of times they need to have certain adaptations either in their behavior or even in their body structure to cope with the winter conditions. So now we're going to talk about some animals that remain active. Okay, so actually what I want to do is show you a prop here and have you try to guess what animal this is from, and then we'll talk about this animal and how it stays active during the winter time. So here we go, here comes the prop. Okay, we have this lovely, strange looking thing right here. Anyone want to take a guess on the Facebook feed? Anybody want to guess what in the world this actually is? I'll wait just a little bit. I see that I'm on a delay on Facebook, so give you just a second to chime in if you think you might know. And I'm not sure, to be honest with you, I'm not sure if I'm able to see the comments that are coming in from the folks that are tuning in from Connecticut Deep's webpage. So I apologize if I'm not able to. I might only be seeing the folks that are tuning in through White Memorial's page. But still feel free to play at home, those folks that are tuning in on Connecticut Deep's page. See if you can guess what this is. And if I don't get a guess in 10 seconds, I am going to reveal the answer. Okay, somebody said snake. I can certainly see why you might think that. I mean, look, it definitely looks very scaly. But I will give you a hint. This is not the entirety of the animal. This is actually just one part of an animal that the rest of its body is furry. This just happens to be one non-furry section of the animal. There we go, we got it, yes. Carol said a beaver tail. That's exactly what this is. So let's talk a little bit about beavers. Beavers, you don't see them very often in the wintertime unless the temperature gets warm enough that the ice melts and they can come up above water. But typically during pretty harsh winters, you're not seeing beavers, but they are still remaining active. They're just not up on the surface. They are inside their lodges, okay? So they basically build their lodges so that there's a little platform in there that stays above the water and allows them to hang out during the wintertime in this lodge. And they're still eating during the wintertime. Of course, they're going to sleep like any animal goes to sleep for part of the day and then wakes up for another part of the day. But during the times when they're active, they are eating, they are drinking, they are doing what animals need to do. So where are they getting their food, right? Because they can't, if they're in a pond where the entire surface of the water is frozen over and the lodge is kind of embedded in that frozen layer, they can't really get out to, chew on bark of trees out on the surface. So what they've done is they have prepared for just such a season. They have gathered sticks during the fall, they have brought them down, and they have created a little cache of sticks and branches underneath the water, okay? So what they'll do in the wintertime when they get hungry, they'll exit out of their entrance hole in their lodge, which takes them right into the deep water. They'll swim over to their cache of sticks. They'll grab one, they'll bring it back up into their lodge. They'll go back up onto their platform, which is above the surface of the water, and they will munch away on those sticks. So that's exactly how they're surviving winter, which I think is just amazing that they stay active. I mean, next time you're taking a winter hike and you pass a beaver lodge that might be towards the edge of the trail, just think about the fact that there could be a family of beavers living in that lodge, active during the wintertime, munching away on branches. We just don't really get to see them as much. Okay. All right. So that is one animal that remains active during the winter, but kind of has to change its behavior in order to stay active. In this case, it's not only changing what it's eating. It's not eating nice, fresh green leaves that it might eat during the spring and summertime. It's kind of had to resort to the cambium of branches. But in addition to that, it's not going out into the woods and chewing down trees. It is using its cache of sticks that it has under the water. All right, next. Here we go. This is an animal that people might not be quite as familiar with. You don't get to see these very often. You are very, very lucky if you happen to come across one of these in the wild. All right, I'm going to show you the mount. This is not a live animal, but here's a really cool mount right here. All right. Beautiful animal. Anybody want to take a guess what this gorgeous little furry creature is? I'll put it up right here next to my head just so you can get an idea of the scale. Pretty small creature, not big enough to be a mink, but in the same family. So I'll give you that hint. What do we have? Anyone want to chime in and tell me what they think this creature is? Anybody? All right, Kate said a weasel, and yes, it is a type of weasel. Bruce, you are correct as well. This is a type of weasel. It is the type of weasel that we call an ermine or a short-tailed weasel. This is an ermine, but this is an ermine. This is what an ermine looks like in the summertime. The main difference between a summer ermine and a winter ermine is its coat color. So here we have this fascinating adaptation that certain animals have where they can actually change the color of their fur in order to blend in with their environment, whether they're out in the summertime or whether they're out in the wintertime, okay? We often hear about camouflage in terms of prey, hiding from their predators through camouflage. In the case of the ermine itself is actually a very voracious predator. It can obviously be preyed upon by larger things, but it is really known for its predator abilities. So you might think, well, why would it need to blend in if it's a predator? Well, think about this. If you're a predator, you still need to be able to sneak up on your prey, right? And so being able to blend in with the snow as you're creeping up on your prey that you're catching is pretty advantageous. So it does help this ermine, whether it's blending in with the leaf litter and the soil during the summertime or blending in with the snow in the wintertime. That is definitely one way that weasels are able to stay active all year round. Okay, all right. So there's just a couple little snippets on remaining active in the wintertime. Now, I think one of the coolest things about animals being active in winter is that because of our snow layer that we get during the winter, we actually can see a lot of different clues of the animals that are active during the wintertime, okay? And so what I want to do now is a little interactive quiz. The way that we can tell animals are active in winter is by seeing their tracks in the snow. And I love going out and searching for tracks. So I'm going to show you a couple of footprints of certain animals. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and chat in to guess what you think these tracks, like who they come from, okay? Who made these tracks? So let's go ahead and start with the easiest one. I know you all are familiar with these lovely tracks. We see them very often in the wintertime. This is an animal that does remain active all winter. Sometimes they will move to different areas where the snowfall might not be as thick. For instance, under conifer stands where the needles of the trees have kind of blocked some of the snow from falling. They might tend to congregate a little bit more in those winter yards, as they call them. Well, we know what this is, right? Yeah, there we go. So these are deer tracks, and this is definitely a good example of an animal that stays active during the winter time. Okay, let's move on to, let's get a little bit tougher here. Here we go. What are these tracks? These are not from your pet dog, although they are from a wild cousin of your pet dog. And you can tell that it is from a canine because check out the little claw marks that you also see with the footprint. That is a really good giveaway of a track from a canine. So what do we have here? Anyone want to chat in? What is this? Yes, very good, Kate. This is a coyote track. Okay, you also can tell it's a coyote by its direct register. Basically, they don't really wobble when they're walking. In fact, a lot of times their back feet end up stepping in the same exact spot where their front feet just were. So it ends up just creating this single line of tracks. So that's a coyote track. A fox track would look fairly similar, but obviously smaller, okay? All right, now compare that to this particular track. And you'll notice, of course, on this one, we are missing those claw marks. And that is a really good giveaway that this is not from a canine, but from, anybody want to chat in and take a little guess? Just waiting a little bit on the delay. What kind of track do we have right here? Who's coming in with the answer? I know we're going to get the right answer. Just a matter of waiting for the video to catch up to me. Yes, thank you, Megan. Yes, this is a bobcat track, okay? Looks very similar to the track of a house cat, but obviously about 2 to 3 times larger. But because cats can retract their claws, and they often do retract them as they're just walking along, a bobcat track will usually not have any claw marks on it. Okay, let's go to this track right here. And this actually brings up a good point. This animal isn't necessarily active the entire winter. This is an animal that kind of goes back and forth from a state of being active to a state of torpor, depending on what the weather is like and how easy they're able to find their food. So if it's nice out, if there's not a whole lot of snow, they can easily get from place to forage for their food. If the water isn't frozen and they can kind of reach into the water, there's a good hint for you. This animal will be active, but during cold snaps or when we have a lot of snow, this animal is going to go into a little bit of a temporary hibernation, if you will. I should really call it more of a torpor though. A temporary sleep for maybe like 2 to 3 days, maybe up to a week or maybe even 2 weeks, and then come back out when the weather's nicer. So what do we have? Yep, these are raccoon tracks. Their front print almost looks like a human handprint with the 5 digits. And their back print, obviously their back feet, they are plantigrade, which means they're putting their entire back foot down on the surface. So that creates this longer back foot track. Okay, and last one, this is probably one of the most common tracks that you will see out in the wild, but they tend to get overlooked. We don't really notice them too much, but what do we have? What do we have right here? What kind of tracks are these? These are a set of 4 tracks. So you've got the front paws here, and then strangely enough, you have the back paws in front of the front paws as they're moving this direction. They're kind of hopping, hop, hop, hop. What kind of tracks do we have in this picture? Anybody want to take a guess? You've probably seen one of these today. If you've been looking out your window. Yes, thank you very much. Yep, it's a squirrel. These are squirrel tracks. And I love when you see these tracks plain as day until you get to the trunk of a tree. And then all of a sudden the tracks disappear and it's obvious that they've gone right up the trunk of that tree. So those are squirrel tracks. Okay. Often you can look for those, you know, kind of like sets, this pattern of 4, 4, and 4 as they're hopping along. All right. Very good, you guys. So that was a good summary of some animals that stay active in the winter time. So we've pretty much covered our 3 main methods that animals use to get through winter. One of them, of course, is remaining active like we do. The other one is going into a deep, deep sleep. And the other one is migrating, is getting out of town, all right? So what I want to do now is I want to show a couple pictures and we'll end with one more live animal. And this is another quiz. So I'm going to show the pictures and you guys tell me if you think that this animal uses migration, hibernation, or remaining active as their way of getting through the winter time, okay? And I need to make sure that I end at 11:50. And so I'm gonna go through these rather quickly. I might not be able to wait until the responses come in on the delay. So just go ahead and think about them and then I'll reveal the answers. So here we have a gorgeous bird right here called a Baltimore Oriole. I wish we got to see these all winter long, but this is a great example of an animal that migrates to Central and South America during the winter time. And then they'll grace us with their beautiful presence when they come back in the spring. This is where they breed, okay? We already talked a little bit about hummingbirds. The only species of hummingbird that we regularly have in the eastern US is the ruby-throated hummingbird. And like I said, they do migrate. They do migrate south into Mexico and Central America for the winter time. Here's a trick question. The bat. What does the bat do? And it's a trick question because they use more than one method. They use more than one method to get through the winter time. And I say that because they do hibernate. Most of us probably realize that they go into hibernation, but they're not staying in the same place to hibernate as they were in the summer, you know, during the warmer months. They have to first migrate to a place like a cave that has a temperature that remains about 50 to 55 degrees all year long. They're going to head over to those spots and it's there that they go into their hibernation. So first they migrate, then they hibernate. We have this behemoth creature. This picture is a big one. This is, I'm sure, a male. These are black bears. Of course, we do have a pretty good population of black bears in our state these days. And this one has always been one that's up for debate because yes, they do go into dens during the winter time. And a lot of them do spend a good portion of the winter in their dens in a somewhat reduced state. But the question is whether it's truly characterized as hibernation. And I guess that kind of depends on your definition of hibernation. But I think at this point, scientists have kind of settled on the fact that they are not true hibernators because their metabolic processes don't get reduced as much as a lot of other animals. Their body temperature doesn't go down quite as much. Their breathing rate Their heart rate doesn't go down quite as much. They can be they can be brought out of their hibernation state if they are disturbed in some way. In fact, the female black bears will even give birth while they are denning. Right about now, January and February is when female black bears are giving birth. So if an animal is going to be giving birth, I'm going to say that they're not quite in as deep of a hibernation state as some of the other animals in our state. So not a true hibernator, but they will go into their dens. There are some bears, though, especially if we have mild winters, and if it's a younger male black bear, sometimes they tend to come out during winter, during warmer days, or if they're trying to find food at an easy source like a bird feeder or a garbage can. Okay, another one real quick. We have a porcupine here, and this is a baby porcupine, which, by the way, has a cute name of a porky pet. Even though you can't have them as pets. And porcupines actually do remain active during the winter time. So you could potentially see porcupine tracks on the snow if you're in the right area. They're mostly in northwestern Connecticut, maybe northeastern Connecticut as well. Not so much down towards the shore. Another animal that remains active, we have the red fox right here. Another one that remains active, and you can tell by the way it changes its coat color. Once again, just like the ermine. They are going to change to a white coat during the winter time. This is a snowshoe hare. Most of our rabbits around here are not snowshoe hares. They are eastern cottontails, or in certain areas, the endangered New England cottontail. Snowshoe hares, not as common in our state, but I think there is a small population of snowshoe hares. And this guy, or girl, I'm not sure which, this is a groundhog and or woodchuck. You can call them either name. Neither name is really all that accurate, to be honest. And being an animal, or being a mammal, you'd think that they might remain active, but there are a couple of mammals in our state that are true hibernators. Of course, the bat was one that we mentioned before, and groundhogs are another one. When they go into hibernation, all of their processes, all of their physiological functions are very much reduced. If you were to somehow find a groundhog deep in its tunnel in the middle of winter and touch it, it would be cold to the touch. It would only be breathing about 4 times per minute. Its heart rate would only be beating about 4 times per minute. I mean, this is a very reduced state for an animal to be in. Okay, and the last quiz one I'm going to show you is actually a live animal. I have 2 minutes to do it. Hold on just a second. Here he comes. Got to give him a little stretch of his wings. All right, come on over, buddy. I can't end without showing you beautiful Shakespeare, the barred owl. Gorgeous animal that lives here at the Nature Center here at White Memorial, was injured in the wild, broke its wing. Unfortunately, his wing had to be amputated. He's no longer able to fly. That's why we have him here. But he is a wonderful example of a bird that, even though it's a bird, even though it's got wings and the ability to fly south, there are some birds that do stay active and stay here all winter long. So barred owls are here in the winter. In fact, this is one of their more active times, especially when it comes to calling, because they are courting their mates. So they are either finding new mates or reuniting with their mates from the past year. So you might hear their distinctive call. Oh, 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 oh. That's the barred owl call. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? They're doing that right about now. So, you know, crack open your window every once in a while at night, see if you might be able to hear that sound around you. They are definitely active during this time. Now, they could potentially locally migrate. So if they happen to be in an area where they're having a hard time finding food, they might move, you know, several miles away, wherever they need to go to be able to still catch their mice and all their lovely food during the winter time. But they're not leaving the state. They're not going south as other birds traditionally do. They are staying in this area for the most part, and they are remaining active. So guys, thank you so much for joining me for this program on wildlife in winter. I hope we kind of gave you a good idea of the variety of different ways that animals try to cope with this winter weather, and you got to meet some cool live animals. Once again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of Connecticut Deep's virtual winter festival. It's been a joy to be with you guys. Thank you so much, and hope to see you soon. Take care, everyone. Oh, I should let you know, White Memorial, even though the museum is closed, all 4,000 acres are open, 40 miles of trails. Come on up whenever you'd like. I see a ton of people out there cross-country skiing and snowshoeing right now. It's a beautiful place to do that. So thank you all. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye, everyone.